There's a moment, a single breath, a fraction of a second where everything you know, everything you've planned, every dream you've nurtured, hangs by a thread so thin you can't even see it. And in that moment, the world doesn't slow down. It doesn't give you time to think, it just takes. On June 1st, 2015, under the golden African sun, in a place where beauty and brutality danced together like old lovers, that moment came for a young woman who thought she was capturing life. Instead, life captured her. And what happened next would be over in seconds. But those seconds would echo forever. Picture this: the air thick with heat, the kind that wraps around your throat and makes every breath feel heavy. The African wilderness stretching endlessly in all directions, golden grass swaying in the hot breeze, acacia trees casting shadows that move like ghosts across the ground. This is Lion Park, just outside Johannesburg, South Africa. A place where tourists come to witness raw power, to see nature in its most magnificent form. But nature doesn't perform. Nature doesn't care about your camera, your excitement, your plans. Nature simply is. And on that afternoon, in the passenger seat of a white safari jeep, Katherine Chappell would learn the oldest lesson in the world. When you enter the kingdom of predators, you are no longer at the top of the food chain. Katherine, Kate to those who knew her, wasn't just another tourist chasing a selfie. She wasn't some thrill seeker looking for an adrenaline rush to post online. No, Kate was something special. She was 29 years old, a visual effects editor whose fingertips had painted magic onto screens across the world. Emmy Award winner, her work on Game of Thrones had brought dragons to life, made armies clash in impossible battles, created worlds that millions of people escaped into every Sunday night. She had worked on Captain America, the Winter Soldier, helping superheroes fly across exploding cities. She had given weight and terror to Godzilla, made that ancient monster feel real enough to touch. Her resume read like a Hollywood dream. Divergent, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, project after project where her artistry turned the impossible into reality. But Kate wasn't in South Africa for work. She wasn't there for fame or fortune or another credit on her growing list of achievements. She was there for something deeper, something that mattered to her soul. Kate had traveled halfway around the world on a volunteer mission, dedicating her time and talent to Wildlife ACT, a conservation charity that fought every day to protect endangered species. She was raising funds, spreading awareness, using her voice and her platform to make sure that animals like lions, rhinos, elephants, the majestic creatures that defined Africa, would still be here for future generations. She believed in this work with every fiber of her being. She believed that these animals deserved respect, protection, space to exist in their natural glory. And she wanted to capture that glory through her lens, to show the world why conservation mattered, why these creatures were worth saving. Kate had been living in Vancouver, Canada since 2013, working for Scanline VFX, one of the most respected visual effects companies in the industry. But her heart was never content to stay in one place. She was restless in the best way possible, always seeking, always exploring, always pushing herself toward the next adventure. Her family would later describe her as brilliant, kind, adventurous, high-spirited. They said her energy and passion could not be contained by mere continents or oceans. She was the kind of person who lit up every room she entered, who made people believe that anything was possible if you just had the courage to chase it. And on that June day, she was chasing something beautiful, something wild, something that would cost her everything. But let's talk about what she was really facing out there. Let's talk about lions, not the cartoon versions, not the cuddly stuffed animals from childhood, not even the majestic slow-motion creatures you see in nature documentaries, set to soaring orchestral music. Real lions, the kind that have ruled Africa for millions of years, the kind that can run 40 miles per hour in short bursts, the kind whose jaws exert over 650 pounds of pressure per square inch, enough to crush bone like breadsticks. A lioness, fully grown, weighs between 250 and 400 pounds of pure muscle, built for one purpose: to kill. Her teeth are designed to grip and tear. Her claws can disembowel prey with a single swipe. And when she's protecting her cubs, when her maternal instincts kick into high gear, she becomes something beyond dangerous. She becomes unstoppable. And here's what most people don't understand. Lions don't attack because they're evil. They don't attack because they hate humans or want to cause pain. They attack because they're wild animals, governed by instinct, by millions of years of evolution that have hardwired their brains to respond to threats in one way: eliminate them. A lioness with cubs doesn't see a tourist with a camera. She sees a potential danger to her babies. And her response is automatic, immediate, and brutal. There's no negotiation, no warning shot, just violence, swift and merciless, because that's how survival works in the wild. That's how her species has endured while so many others have vanished into extinction. Lion Park knew this. The entire facility was built around this knowledge. The park housed over 80 lions, along with cheetahs, hyenas, wild dogs, and other predators. Visitors drove through the enclosures in their own vehicles, following a carefully designed route that allowed them to see these magnificent creatures up close, while supposedly maintaining safety. But safety in a place like this is an illusion. It's a thin veneer of control painted over something fundamentally wild and unpredictable. And that's why the rules existed. That's why every single guest, without exception, received a warning slip before entering the lion enclosure. That's why signs were posted everywhere. On gates, on fences, on information boards, in bold letters, in multiple languages, with pictures for those who couldn't read. Keep your windows closed at all times. Do not exit your vehicle. Predators are dangerous and may attack without warning. These weren't suggestions. These weren't guidelines for the overly cautious. They were the difference between life and death. And yet, time and time again, people ignored them. They rolled down windows because the glass created a glare in their photos. They leaned out to get a better angle. They forgot for just one critical moment that they were not at a zoo. They were not watching animals safely contained behind barriers designed by engineers and tested for decades. They were in the lions' territory, in their home. And in that home, the lions made the rules. Not the park management, not the tour guides, the lions. Kate was with Pierre Potgieter that day, a 66-year-old tour operator who ran Calabash tours. Pierre had been doing this for years. He knew Lion Park like the back of his weathered hand. He knew the routes, the protocols, the dangers, or at least he should have. They were driving slowly through the lion enclosure, the engine of the white Jeep humming softly, tires crunching over dirt and dried grass. The sun was brutal overhead, turning the metal roof of the vehicle into an oven. Around them, the landscape seemed peaceful, almost serene. Lions lounged in the shade of scattered trees, their bodies relaxed, tails flicking lazily at flies. Some were sleeping, their massive rib cages rising and falling with deep, rumbling breaths. Others were grooming each other, rough tongues scraping across fur, social bonds being reinforced in the quiet afternoon. And some were watching, always watching, their amber eyes tracking movement, cataloging every vehicle, every sound, every shift in the environment, because that's what predators do. They watch, they wait, they assess. Kate raised her camera, her artist's eye already framing the shot. She wanted something special, something that would capture not just the physical presence of these animals, but their essence, the raw power, the primal beauty, the connection to something ancient and untamed. She wanted to show people why these creatures mattered, why they deserved protection, why the world would be a poorer place without them. So she adjusted her lens, checking the light, the composition, the focus, and then she made a decision. A small decision, an innocent decision, a decision that would end her life. She rolled down the passenger window, just a little bit, just enough to eliminate the glare on the glass, to get a clearer view, to capture the perfect image, just enough, and everything changed. Other vehicles were scattered throughout the enclosure, their occupants doing exactly what Kate was doing, taking photos, exclaiming over the beauty of the lions, marveling at how close they could get to such incredible predators. But then, Someone in another car noticed something. Movement. Purposeful movement. A lioness was on the move, and she wasn't just wandering aimlessly. She was walking toward the white Jeep. Her head was low, her shoulders rolling with each step, her eyes fixed with an intensity that made the observer's blood run cold. This wasn't curiosity. This was something else, something primal and terrifying. The person who noticed started honking their horn, sharp, urgent blasts that shattered the peaceful afternoon. Then another vehicle joined in, and another, a cacophony of warning, of desperate attempts to alert the two people in the Jeep before it was too late. People were shouting, waving their arms frantically through closed windows, some even trying to drive closer to get their attention. The noise was deafening, chaotic, panicked. But inside the white Jeep, Kate was focused on her viewfinder. The world had narrowed to the frame in her camera, to the play of light on fur, to the perfect moment she was trying to capture. She heard the horns, maybe, as distant background noise. Or maybe she didn't hear them at all, too absorbed in her work, too focused on her mission. And Pierre, where was his attention? Was he watching Kate? Was he watching the road? Was he looking at the lioness approaching from the side? The lioness stopped, just 1 meter away from the vehicle, 3 feet. Close enough that if Kate had turned her head, she would have been staring directly into those golden eyes. Close enough to see the individual whiskers on the lioness's muzzle, the slight moisture on her black nose, the way her chest expanded with each breath. The animal's muscles were coiled tight beneath her tawny coat, every fiber of her being focused on the open window, on the vulnerability it represented, on the threat she perceived. Her tail flicked once, twice, a warning sign that any experienced wildlife guide would have recognized immediately. Her ears rotated forward, honing in on the sounds coming from inside the vehicle. And her eyes, those ancient, ruthless, beautiful eyes, never blinked. This was the moment, the thread, the breath before everything fell apart. 1 second of perfect stillness where the universe held its breath, where fate balanced on a knife's edge, where everything that would happen next was already inevitable but hadn't yet begun. Kate still didn't know. She was still adjusting her camera, still thinking about composition and lighting and the story she wanted to tell, still alive, still filled with dreams and plans and the unshakable belief that she had a future waiting for her. Still Katherine Chappell, Emmy-winning visual effects artist, conservationist, adventurer, beloved daughter, and sister and friend. And then the lioness lunged. The attack was explosive, violent beyond description. One moment the lioness was standing there, the next she was airborne, her massive body launching through the open window with a speed that defied comprehension. Her head and shoulders crashed into the passenger compartment. All 300 pounds of predator suddenly inside the vehicle, filling the space with fur and muscle and the overwhelming stench of wild animal. Her jaws opened impossibly wide, teeth like ivory daggers flashing in the sunlight for a split second, before they clamped down on Kate's neck. The sound was horrific, a wet, crunching noise mixed with the lioness's guttural snarl, a sound that came from deep in her chest, primal and terrifying. Kate tried to scream, but the sound was cut off, choked, turned into a gurgle as teeth punctured her throat, tearing through flesh and muscle and arteries. Pierre reacted with the desperation of a man watching death unfold inches away. He threw himself at the lioness, his hands grabbing at her massive head, trying to pull her off, trying to pry those jaws open. But you don't fight a lion with your bare hands. You don't overpower an apex predator in the middle of an attack. The lioness thrashed, her neck muscles bunching with terrifying strength, and Pierre's arm was caught in the chaos. He felt teeth sink into his forearm, felt his own flesh tear, felt warm blood spray across the dashboard and windshield. The pain was blinding, but he didn't let go, couldn't let go, had to keep fighting because maybe, somehow, he could save her. Maybe if he just fought hard enough, screamed loud enough, refused to give up. But the damage was already done. The lioness had struck with surgical precision, her instincts guiding her jaws to the most vulnerable part of Kate's body. The human neck is fragile, filled with blood vessels that can't be protected, can't be armored, can only be exposed and hoped never to be targeted. and the lioness's teeth had found the carotid artery. The jugular vein had torn through them both, and now Kate's blood was pouring out in thick, pulsing streams, the bright red arterial blood mixing with the darker venous blood, pooling in the seat, soaking through her clothes, dripping onto the floor of the Jeep. The lioness pulled back as suddenly as she'd attacked, extracting herself from the window, her muzzle dark and wet with blood. She didn't charge again, didn't need to. She backed away a few steps, her sides heaving, her eyes still locked on the vehicle, watching to make sure the threat was neutralized. Around her, other lions were stirring, alerted by the commotion, curious about the smell of blood in the air. But the attacking lioness stood her ground, a barrier between the vehicle and her cubs. Her maternal duty fulfilled, she had protected what was hers, and now she simply watched. Inside the Jeep, Pierre was pressing both hands against Kate's neck, trying desperately to stop the bleeding, his own wounded arm screaming in protest. But the pain didn't matter. Nothing mattered except stopping the blood. But it wouldn't stop. It flowed between his fingers, hot and thick, so much blood that he couldn't believe one person could lose this much and still be alive. His hands were completely red, his shirt was soaked, the entire interior of the vehicle looked like a crime scene. And Kate, oh God, Kate. She was slumping in the seat, her eyes rolling back, her face going pale, her body limp and unresponsive. Pierre was shouting, begging her to stay with him, to hold on, help was coming, just hold on, please God, just hold on. But her skin was cold to the touch and getting colder, and he knew, somewhere in the part of his brain that wasn't drowning in panic and trauma, he knew she was dying. The other vehicles converged on the scene within seconds, though it felt like hours. Park rangers came running, radios crackling with urgent calls for medical assistance, for backup, for anyone who could help. Someone threw the Jeep into gear and started driving toward the exit, toward the gate where the ambulance would be waiting, every second feeling like an eternity. The lioness watched them go, calm now, almost indifferent. She had done what needed to be done. The humans were frantic, desperate, their voices high and sharp with fear. But in the lioness's world, this was just another day, just survival, just instinct. The ambulance was already racing toward Lion Park, sirens wailing, paramedics preparing equipment, hoping they'd get there in time, but knowing from the description radioed in that it was probably already too late. When they arrived at the park entrance, the white Jeep was already there, and they could see the blood from 20 feet away. It covered the door, the window, the side of the vehicle. It was everywhere. The paramedics jumped out, grabbing their trauma kits, running to the passenger side. Pierre was still pressing on Kate's neck, his face streaked with tears and blood and sweat, his eyes wild with trauma and shock. They gently moved him aside, assessed Kate's condition, and felt for a pulse. Nothing. They checked again. Still nothing. They tried CPR, tried to ventilate, tried everything in their training. But some injuries are simply incompatible with life. When the carotid artery is severed, when that much blood is lost that quickly, the brain is starved of oxygen within seconds. Kate had probably been unconscious within 30 seconds of the attack. And now, despite their best efforts, despite everything they knew and everything they tried, there was nothing left to save. At 2:17 p.m., surrounded by strangers in a foreign land beneath the vast African sky, with the sounds of lions still audible in the distance, Katherine Chappell was pronounced dead at the scene. She had come to Africa to protect wildlife, and in the cruelest twist of fate imaginable, it was wildlife that had taken her life. The aftermath was a storm of chaos, grief, and finger-pointing. Lion Park was immediately shut down while investigators swarmed the scene, photographing everything, interviewing every witness, trying to piece together exactly what had happened and who, if anyone, was to blame. The warning slip, the one that explicitly stated in clear language to keep all windows closed at all times, was found on the passenger seat, right where it had been placed at the start of the tour, now spattered with Kate's blood. It was a damning piece of evidence, a silent witness to a rule that had been broken with fatal consequences. But the question remained, whose fault was it? Lion Park officials were quick to point out that multiple witnesses confirmed both the driver's window and the passenger's window had been opened during the attack. If true, that meant Pierre had violated the rules just as much as Kate. But Pierre's company, Calabash Tours, vehemently denied this claim. They insisted that only the passenger window had been opened, and they strongly implied that Kate had done so herself, possibly without Pierre's knowledge or against his warnings. Pierre himself was too traumatized to give a coherent account immediately after the attack. He had suffered significant injuries to his arm, required medical treatment, and some reports suggested he may have suffered a heart attack during the ordeal, his 66-year-old body, unable to cope with the physical and emotional trauma of watching someone die while being powerless to stop it. The lioness was not euthanized. This decision sparked debate, but ultimately park officials and wildlife experts agreed. The animal had done nothing wrong. She had not attacked maliciously. She had not broken out of an enclosure or violated any natural law. She was a wild animal, acting on instinct, protecting herself and her cubs from a perceived threat. She had mated recently and had young cubs with her, which explained her heightened protective behavior. In her world, the open window and the humans inside represented danger, and she had responded the only way her millions of years of evolution had taught her to respond, with overwhelming force. She was moved to a different section of the park, away from the public areas while the investigation continued. But she was allowed to live because in the end she was just being a lion. And being a lion is not a crime. News of Katherine Chappell's death spread across the globe within hours. Major news outlets picked up the story. CNN, BBC, ABC News, newspapers in every language. The headlines were stark and sensational. American tourist killed by lion in South Africa. Emmy-winning editor dies in lion attack. Wildlife volunteer mauled to death at safari park. Social media exploded with reactions, horror, sadness, anger, and the inevitable debates about who was to blame. Some people condemned the park for allowing such dangerous interactions. Others blamed Pierre for not preventing Kate from opening the window. Still others, in a cruel display of victim blaming, suggested Kate should have known better, should have followed the rules, should have been more careful. But Kate's family chose grace. In their official statement, they said, Katie was a brilliant, kind, adventurous, and high-spirited woman. Her energy and passion could not be contained by mere continents or oceans. She was very much loved, and shared her love for life with those she met. They didn't assign blame. They didn't lash out. They simply honored the memory of a woman who had lived fully, loved deeply, and died trying to make the world a better place. On June 6, 2015, a memorial service was held in her hometown of Rye, New York. Friends, family, and colleagues from the film industry gathered to remember Kate, to share stories of her talent and kindness, to try to make sense of a death that seemed so random, so preventable, so heartbreakingly unfair. In the weeks and months that followed, Lion Park reinforced its safety protocols and issued a statement that would echo long after the media moved on to other stories. Visitors to South Africa need to remember that predators are dangerous, and rules are there for their own safety. If all the rules are adhered to during your visit to Lion Park, national parks, and other similar facilities, your visit will be a safe and treasured experience. It was a simple message, but one that carried the weight of tragedy. Rules exist for a reason. They are written in blood, learned through loss, created because someone, somewhere, paid the ultimate price for a moment of carelessness. And that's the lesson that Katherine Chappell's death teaches us. Not that wild animals are evil. Not that conservation is too dangerous. Not that we should stop seeking adventure or exploring the natural world. But that we must respect the wild. We must acknowledge that when we enter spaces where predators live, we are no longer the dominant species. We are visitors in someone else's home, and in that home, our cameras, our intelligence, our technology, none of it matters. What matters is instinct. What matters is survival. What matters is the ancient primal dance between predator and prey that has existed since long before humans walked the earth and will continue long after we're gone. The open window, that's all it took. A few inches of space, a momentary lapse in judgment. A single decision made in a fraction of a second, and everything changed. Katherine Chappell, who had spent her career creating magic, who had won awards for her artistry, who had dedicated her final days to protecting the very animals that would kill her. She lost her life because of a gap in glass. The cruelty of it is almost unbearable. The randomness of it is terrifying. And the finality of it is absolute. Lion Park still operates today. Tourists still drive through the enclosures, still take their photos, still marvel at the raw power of Africa's predators. The lions are still there, lounging, hunting, living their lives according to rhythms that haven't changed in millennia. And the signs are still posted over and over in every language. Keep your windows closed. But every now and then, someone forgets. Someone thinks they know better. Someone rolls down a window for just a second, just one quick photo, just one perfect shot. And the lions watch, and remember, and wait, because they are what they have always been: wild, magnificent, powerful, and utterly, devastatingly unforgiving. And in their world, there are no second chances. There is only survival, and sometimes survival demands a price that humans are not prepared to pay.